Meeting of the Parks Advisory Committee for the first time in 4 months is coming to order.
Yeah, it's been a while.
Glad to see everybody here. Dealey, did we start with roll call?
Yeah.
Okay, we'll just go start with,
Mic closer?
yes. Remember the mic so we don't mumble through the video. Michelle, you want to start just introduction?
Michelle Dragany. Susanna Cantrell.
Richard Barker.
Nancy Marsh.
Patrick Tierney.
Fran Pollard.
And as of right now, we don't have Paul Kolsch, but I'm expecting him to come. I thought he was on his way. Okay, we'll start with public comments. We have 2 requests for public comments for items that are not on the agenda. We'll be not too draconian with time, but we'll try to hold for 3 minutes. If you have comments on something that is on the agenda, please also fill out a speaker sheet, but we'll call you when we get there. So Jean Knight, regarding children's play areas. I'll give you the floor.
Hi, thank you for letting me speak.
What's your name?
Jean Knight, and I'm on Francisco Street, up the steepest part of Francisco Street. I want to urge the Parks Advisory Committee to bring children's play areas back to the front burner. I understand what happened with the Balboa Circle project, but I think it would be a shame for these to be tabled because the voices of a few, and I don't mean to downplay their concerns. Clearly there was an odd issue about who owned what, and but as one of the residents who I think 5 or 6 spoke at that meeting said that regardless of whether you could clear that up, they simply didn't want development there. And when I looked at their proposal and the outreach that you did, which was actually amazing. I mean, you are to be commended for that proposal, even though every proposal has things that people do and don't like. I mean, the response was positive in general, and especially for the playground. I think you had 80-some odd comments, and over like 50 to 60 were positive for the playground, including residents along that same corridor. So to have 5 or 6 people who showed up at the meeting who even said their main issue was really that they didn't want the development. Their voices, although important, should not outweigh all the other voices that you heard. Even though we weren't physically present, our voices still matter. And children's play areas, to many, are probably the greatest need we have. The children, they have very few places to play. There's an issue of affordability on the coast. The children's play areas give lower income residents a place for their children. So we urge you to bring it back to the front.
Thank you, Jean.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, Paul, we're joined by, you can say your name.
Hi.
Paul Kolsch.
Claudia Marshall.
Nice to meet you.
Okay, still on the, just started. So on the subject of playgrounds, we have Joanne.
Good evening, everybody. Joanne Rakoski, and I'm here actually to entreat you also to reinstate this as an issue that you'll look at. And I speak to you as a grandma, proud grandma, and also on behalf of my own daughter, we use the Quarry Park playground all the time. But we are in the fortunate position of being pretty close, we're within walking distance. Not everybody in Granada is. And additionally to that, on the coast side, there are not a lot of areas for children to play. There are some beautiful playgrounds around, such as the one, the Ocean View playground is stellar, but you have to drive to get there. And so if transportation becomes an issue and you're trying to do something that's local and affordable and you don't have the opportunity, the money to afford, say, a zoo pass or other kinds of things that cost big bucks, then playgrounds are where kids can just be kids, regardless of their age. And so I also would just say that there can be vision with how playgrounds are developed so that they can have opportunities for imaginative play without necessarily having structures that some people find less agreeable. So again, I'm hoping that this will come back on the forefront of the deliberation as you look at the plans. Thank you.
Thanks, Joanne. Sorry, we can't discuss because it's not on our agenda, but really appreciate you coming and really appreciate you taking the time to make comments, particularly since we have a couple board members here, so it's nice for them to hear too. Michelle? Show and tell.
For the camera. So if you go to my website or you just Google Coastside Buzz Princeton Ring, then you can see the whole plan for this. It's basically a 1,000 circumference floating dock. And when I came to the meeting for the survey that we were trying to build, the first thing on the list was swimming. And I was like, well, how's that going to work? And there was silence, and I said, well, here, the Princeton Ring. And so GCSD has some money. And there is no pool on the coast side. It's a mess up at the high school. I've been trying to get that pool open for 8 years. Still no free swim, still no lessons. Although I have a pact with Matthew Chidester, who's the deputy city manager, because he grew up here, and he learned how to swim in that pool, to get that pool open by next summer. But if that pool opens, it's going to be full of water polo and swim team, Maverick swim team, and the lap swim. So there's not really any time for free swim and swim lessons. So the potential for this Princeton Ring, besides also serving sailing and paddlecraft, we'll have a saltwater heated filtered pool. Salt water so that it leaks or anything like that. It's not chlorine going into the harbor. And there's only 3 jurisdictions to build this dock. That would be the county, going from the land. It's an ADA accessible ramp. Again, there's more pictures on my website. And then you have the ADA accessible ramp, and then you have a sailing. It's all enclosed. You have the Harbor District, and you have California Coastal Commission. Coastal Commission's already signed off on this. This is visitor serving. They love it. Parking is an issue, but I solved that problem too. Turns out Oceano's parking lot is largely empty, 75% empty in fact, because the old zoning required them to have 1 parking place per room. Nobody goes to the Oceano in a car. They Uber, they ride share, they take a taxi. In fact, I led a hike with the National Parking Association of America, and they were staying at the Ritz. Guess how I got to the Ritz? They Ubered. So parking is changing, and I took Sabrina Brennan, who's Harbor Commissioner, on a little bike tour of the parking lot, and she realized that there really were about 250 parking spaces that were empty. It's 330 total. So if we take the end of Vassar and we turn that into a drop-off zone, like most people do in most beach cities, they always have a drop-off zone, and we use Lime bikes and Lime scooters, maybe golf carts or ADA accessible things. People can drop their family off there, they can enjoy the beach or the Princeton Ring, they can go park their car at the Oceano, and then they can come back to their families, and then reverse that on the way home. So I needed to say this today so that we get it on the agenda for a GCSD. So does anybody, I guess you can't ask me any questions, so.
Can you pass that?
Michelle,
Can you pass that around? So we
Oh,
can-
yeah.
How about if I make some copies? Yeah.
It's the sort of thing that
For our future.
would be interesting if the board would put it on our work plan, then we could really review it.
It'd be great.
Yeah, board. Okay, we'll get to our regular agenda, starting with approving, for those of you who can remember last April, the April meeting minutes, which were mainly to do with the newsletter and webpage updates and the summer recreation programs. Any questions or corrections on the minutes?
I didn't see anything, so I move to approve the minutes unless somebody else caught something.
Oh, there's a highlight thing. I would have voted yes for, seems the question as to whether Dragony or Barker abstained. I don't think either of us.
No, it was Rick abstained, yeah.
Oh, okay.
Oh, you haven't the earlier
My
draft?
name is on there too.
Okay, it's been
Oh,
corrected.
okay,
on-
gotcha.
Okay, we have a motion to approve, we have a second?
Mhm.
seconded by Michelle. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. 7-0, okay. Next item is a review. There's a chart in your packet of the summer programs. Oh, I'm sorry, no, next is to introduce our new summer, our Parks and Recreation Coordinator, Claudia Marshall. You have her, you have your CV in the pack. Claudia is bringing lots of experience in marketing and marketing communications. She was on the architecture committee for the town of Woodside for 18 years, so she's got a lot of that government agency type experience, as well as software training, learning, little kids learning through music, and she gives a drawing class in the recreation program at Half Moon Bay at the Ted Adcock Center. So lots of great connections, and we've been working together for about a month or 6 weeks, and starting a great partnership. So welcome, Claudia.
Thank you.
Anything else I missed or you'd like to add? Nope.
I might just mention, working with Claudia so far has been really refreshing. We worked very hard together on the guided family hike in Spanish at Rancho, and she was right there all the time. I give you a lot of credit.
It'll be particularly next year as we go through the next cycle. We're going to really appreciate Claudia doing all the writing and promotion,
Nancy's
contracting.
gonna really appreciate it.
Paperwork. Okay, thank you. Glad to have you with us, Claudia.
Thanks.
Reviewing the summer recreation programs, we've only got 2 more, but I just wanted to review, and more for learning for next year, kind of where we got participation, where we didn't, and we had some pretty big distinctions between where we had registrations and the actual number of people who came that could go in either direction. So I'm going to, I just had an email back and forth with Camila Lombard today. We had 10 people sign up for the coastal clams and fish. We had 4 people arrive. The tot lot jumpers we really made optional. Michelle, how many people showed up for the first one?
I would say about 30.
Wow.
Okay, so that's
awesome. I mean, I think that the whole post office thing just really worked, and I think if we have a sign up that says, free jumper and who we are, that'll be, I don't know, Claudia, if you're working on a sign or not for that, we talked about it a little bit, but, that way when people are driving by or walking by, they can there's parking right there.
Yeah. We decided to forego the $5 drop-in charge and just make it free.
Yeah.
That's-
I mean, it was really good networking, I was able to, pass out some catalogs and stuff like that. And there was definitely some people that weren't aware. I would say half the people weren't aware of anything of what we were doing, maybe even a little bit more.
Good.
And they saw it, so that just gives us a clue for next year.
Visibility, yeah. So we don't have any signups for the one that's in a couple weeks, but with the visibility, we should,
You're talking about the adaptive cycling?
no,
Tot
the
lot?
next tot lot
I
jumpers.
just did my first,
Oh,
social
okay,
media, so.
okay.
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 And then I'll put it up, Nextdoor is really good too. I think I put it on Nextdoor the day before, and I asked people as they came, where'd you find out? And I think 3 or 4 of them found out through Nextdoor, through what I posted.
I think Genevieve was putting up something for most of the programs 10 and 5 days ahead, but I didn't see it for the Spanish hike, so I didn't know if she's still routinely doing it. Claudia's doing it. Okay. The adaptive cycling, I know we only opened up 2 spaces because, Pat, you were saving the other 14 for the class at
Right.
Granada
I'm
as well.
working with the class, the special needs class at El Granada School, and working with the teacher, and she's going to be distributing information about it the first week of school and the second week. So I anticipate there will be some interest there.
Okay, if they don't get 14, do you want to open up more of the spots on Eventbrite?
Yeah, well, we have a limit on the number of bicycles.
Yeah.
And so I want to hold back until, we get a better sense from the teacher, and their feedback from the families, how many kids might be there.
Yeah, okay. If you want to open up more, I think Claudia can do that.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm going to jump down to the Learn to Surf Camp for Kids, which we did not get any signers for and which was canceled. That's one of the ones that
Who was
did
the
have
company
a,
that was going to be?
it was Tim.
Can I just mention, he did state that he would make a better effort to do some advertising for it himself, because he didn't have time to at all this
Yeah.
year, so.
I think, yeah,
It's a good program.
yeah.
Well, you've got some inundation, you've got Tommy Tsunami, you've got the guy from the city, Fabio, then you've got Pillar Point Surfing, and then you've got Tim, and you actually have Dave, so there's only like 3 licenses that I think that the city allows. And I think Dave Alexander's semi-retired, so he's sort of like giving Tommy Tsunami the nod, because he's the young kid. And Pillar Point's pretty solid, and so is Fabio. So Tim is, he's doing other stuff. He's got a full-time job and he does fire sprinkling installation, so.
Yeah, I think he said he was so busy with that it was okay if we canceled it.
Right, exactly.
But it was one of ours that had a cost with it, so
Right.
I think next year, one of the things we might do is just check the cost effectiveness of what we're offering through GCSD versus the other ones, and maybe give some counsel to some of the providers on that.
His was real like turnkey for a beginner who never surfed before. They provided everything, which, I mean, that's great, but there might, it might be, exactly. There's cost for that.
Yeah.
How
Yeah, I
much,
just
how
don't
much
know
was
how
he
to-
charging?
I was afraid someone's going to ask me that. I have to find the brochure. $325.
For 1 week?
4 days, 2 days 1 week, 2 days the next week.
That's a little on the high side. I know when I was working with the youth sailing for the Half Moon Bay Yacht Club, and this is maybe 7 or 8 years ago, and I still think it's the same. If you go over 300, it's this invisible limit.
Yeah, so maybe the cost sensitive.
Oh,
Okay. Again, we have to stay facing forward. Let me jump down to Rosen Movement for Over Adults, which was the first one that started, and it came right after the mailers came out, and we were a little on a back foot, but 5 ladies showed up, and the trainers showed up, and then really for all 6 weeks, I think those between 4 and 6 people showed up for those classes, which was a $5 drop-in fee, and they collected it themselves. So, and they did it in here,
oh, that's nice.
and it seemed to work out. So that.
What about mountain biking? Mountain biking?
Oh, those are they say past. Those were actually last
Oh,
year's.
coming up.
Yeah.
Okay.
Or no, they were from last year's list.
Oh,
CPR and first aid class. You met the minimum 8 people.
Yeah, it was a success. It was great, yeah.
So that was there was a comment that the general manager made at a board meeting when I reviewed this at, I think, the May meeting. And he said, isn't it funny that people are having to pay to do something that's so important for the community? And he suggested next year we might think about having the district, because we have money, subsidize
Wow,
some of
that'd
those
be
things to make
awesome.
some of
Yeah.
our pricing better. So that was
That'd be very cool. I love it.
that was a suggestion I wish I heard 3 months before that, but.
Yeah.
That's good also because it's some people for their job are required to have it,
Yeah,
It'd make it more
So it's like
accessible for the
kind of
Latino
a nice-
community.
yeah, and they have to pay out of pocket.
Mm-hmm.
So we'll keep that in mind for next year. There could be some things that we do subsidize.
That's a lovely thought.
The walk through history, Ocean Shore Railroad, you may remember that Gail Erickson was going to do that one and the Coastal Trail, and she fell ill about a week or 10 days before this program. And if you don't know, she subsequently passed away from pancreatic cancer. So Barbara Dye stepped in. We had about, I think, 10 people sign up, and about 20 people showed up. Partly because we've been getting great support from the Half Moon Bay Review with kind of some of their reporter turnover. We have these very gung-ho young reporters. And they did a wonderful article and put it on their calendar in the paper. And I think you had almost too many people to keep track of and talk to.
Really good time. It
Yeah.
was really fun. Everybody seemed to really enjoy it.
That was other than Tot Lots winning the award for most popular. One thing I want to say about that one for future, Len Erickson, when he did himself the Coastal Trail Walk, he tracked down Barbara Vanderwerf, who wrote the Granada history book.
All right.
And she's quite amenable to transferring the rights to the book, which is the seminal history of Granada, to the district, if we want it and if we want to produce the book and keep selling it. What he's trying to do, and he was trying to do it before he left town for the month of August, is track down the printer. Midcoast Parklands was the last entity that had it printed, and he's trying to track down the printer that they used is no longer in business. So he's trying to track down who's holding the digital copy. But it's something that for next year or next time we do these walks, if we could get a supply of the books, we might be able to, charge the cost of the book and pair it with the walk, just for some added value for history. But that would be, I think, a nice thing for the district to hold, since.
Didn't I give out copies of the book to the initial PAC group?
I got mine from Len and
I
Gail.
thought I did, I think,
And-
because I was able to get some.
Yeah, I don't think so,
Yes, you
actually.
did.
Yeah,
Might
I
have-
did.
I don't think
did.
I've- I don't
They're
think
all
I've ever
used,
seen the book.
so.
Yeah, I want one too.
Yeah.
You got one?
I don't have one either.
Yeah, well, you were not.
I bought mine from Gail.
Oh, did you?
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember going and I got some used ones. They had them at the old bookstore down there in Hudson Bay, and I gave them to the first elected PAC board members.
I was on the first elected PAC board and we enjoyed it.
And you did? Oh, I remember giving them out.
She has one, so if you get another one, you can give it to me.
There were people who said they already had them, because I only think I got 6 copies or something. There was 8 people. But anyways, I'll see if I can track down other.
Yeah, well, if we track that down, we'll at least try to get a printed supply.
I may have the reprint for that. Barbara gave me that, if we wanted to reprint it, but MPL never could do that. So I think I still have it. I'll look and maybe
Okay.
that'll be helpful. I don't know.
Yeah, I think it would be great to have. The family dog training, we had 0, and so we canceled that. And that one, I think, was overpriced. It was 2 people who are just starting their business. And it was a little bit more complicated because it was for parents and kids together. So more people to manage per dog. And the 2 trainers were going to do it together. But their price was almost double what someone was advertising on Nextdoor for a 6-session, not parent-child, but they were competing with $150 and their price was $280. And I think also I don't think they did a lot of advertising. It was we thought it was a good idea, but we didn't, at that price point, we didn't get any.
So next year, maybe we need to vet these prices more on the front end. Although I think our knowledge from this year is going to help, a lot for next year.
Yeah, I think we just let the vendors inform us, but I think we can maybe help some of them, particularly those that are new, with doing some market research before they set their price. Particularly since the new information we have from the board review is we don't need, I'm going to look at the board members when I say this, we don't need to worry about making revenue or making a profit from the recreation program, so we really just need to recoup our costs. And even then, we could subsidize some. I was getting a hand signal. So that.
Serve the community.
Yes, and yeah, we're getting a little bit of their property taxes to do it, so we can spend a little bit of that property tax on supporting recreation.
Like the skate ramp.
Like we're doing with the skate ramp. The history of creating, preserving Quarry Park in our small town. We had just 3 people sign up, but Fran did that talk, and I think we had 7 or 8 people.
No, we had a dozen.
Yeah, a dozen.
A dozen people.
It was fantastic.
I was probably not counting my family.
Definitely need to do it. I mean, it was stuff I didn't know, and people need to know what you did for the last, 40, 50 years. I mean, she literally saved El Granada and Quarry Park. I mean, fight after, people kept coming in, and really crazy things like the Harbor District wanting to harvest, all of the rock from the quarry and bring it through El Granada to fill up the harbor. How's that for a plan?
Yeah, for all
So,
the houses.
anyway, thanks.
25%
That's great.
of the harbor
Yeah.
to create land. Yeah, it went well. I think a dozen people came, and they all seemed very interested. Those that came were very inquisitive and enjoyed it.
We were there for, I think, almost 2 hours.
Yeah.
really interesting. So there is a lot of interest in kind of the history and
Yeah, it's
for us
unbelievable,
newbies.
the plans that were being schemed for this little area.
I like how you told the
Grand
story, because it was
plans.
full of schemes.
Yeah, it was.
It was, yeah.
Big schemes.
Well, imagine, 200,000 people would have been here.
Between, from Montera to Half
We have barely
Well, that's
30.
nice.
Yeah.
Well, Montera, actually, I think it's all the way down the coast.
All the way down the
Yeah,
coast.
for
It's
200, it was
180,000.
supposed to be 100,000 here and 100,000 on the
Yes.
south
These
coast.
encounter schemes.
Yeah.
Yes.
All the way.
Okay, we're glad they all
So
lost.
that included, I'll just say it quickly, that included the Harbor District, Caltrans, and a 6 to 8 lane freeway coming down the front. What was the third one? Oh, the Westinghouse owned all the open space, all the hills that you see here. And they were planning to create another city, a big city like they created in Florida. And so they were bringing that plan up here. And that's what we were going to have.
And the only thing they built, you see what a good student I was Clipper Ridge.
Pardon me?
The only thing they built was Clipper Ridge. Right?
Yeah, well, actually, another developer was here. He built it. And then he's the one that sold it to actually 2 other builders from Southern California, Dean and Dean, who's then got Westinghouse as the money, the pocket to pay for all of it. And it just got to be bigger and bigger and bigger. And people just, rose up and objected to it all, put a stop to it. Took a few years, but we put a stop to it.
Good. Well done. I was glad to see a number of people come for that. The next is Teen Girls Introduction to Sailing is the one that I think is just unfortunate, because we did have, it was a free morning and lunch program. We had 4 signups, but it was the one that we did need the identification number for receiving fingerprints and background checks.
Oh.
And we got the response only in late June from the DOJ to enable us to be a record keeper, but have we got it? Have we got the full program yet?
I don't believe so.
Okay, so we don't have our identification number yet. We will have it for next year. But, so we did have to cancel that one because we couldn't manage the kids. We did not get any signups through us for the Half Moon Bay Yacht Club youth sailing program, but it was one of their regular programs. And this was one where we had a premium to recoup our costs and a little more going through us. And so I suspect anybody who wanted to go just signed up directly with the yacht club. So learnings for next year as well. The Costa Trail History Walk, we had 9 people sign up. I think we had about 7 who came. I think by the end we had 5 of us plus Len.
8.
8, okay. But it was it was less, I think, less about the history and more about exploring the coastal trail northward through Princeton. So,
nice.
but a nice education on the view of the coastal trail and following the signs. It was a nice history from Len. Last but not least, the guided hike in Rancho Corral de Tierra. Pat did do a lot of promotion for. We had 11 people register. I think we had a belief that there were people who weren't registering since we made it optional. We did have just one family who came, and actually they came from Burlingame. And they didn't speak Spanish, but the 2 little boys were in a Spanish immersion program, so they wanted them to have the Spanish hike. They and the 3 rangers went off, went in a different direction for a little bit easier hike for the little kids. So they didn't come over the hill in vain.
Nice.
But we did not get, and it will be, I think it's just something to explore, and maybe our survey, which has a question about Spanish language outdoor programs, may help, why we really didn't get any locals that came for the program.
So I wonder if there'd be any way to follow up with the people that bought tickets, and, not really? Or do they-
You can send an
do they
email
pay
to
for
the
the ticket?
people who came, they didn't pay, it's free.
Yeah.
And it's possible to send an email to them from Eventbrite.
Mm-hmm.
I know the 4 people who came, they did sign up, because they found it through Eventbrite. So I can't tell you those names, but
Yeah,
it's something,
yeah.
Claudia, to think about whether we could survey the people who signed up on Eventbrite and just say, did you come? And if you didn't come, why didn't you come? If you came, did you enjoy it? As a follow-up survey.
You know, for the,
Information that may be pertinent to the hike.
Jean, can you send it the mic?
Actually, Joanne, you know, if you want to.
We were just having our little sidebar over here. But we have, both of us, been real involved in rapid response efforts. If somebody who's in fear calls the hotline, thinks that ICE is in the neighborhood. And there was a huge scare a couple of weeks ago that I'm sure all of you are aware of. And in conversations subsequent to that, and with one of the caseworkers from Coastside Hope, and also with one of the librarians from Half Moon Bay Library, the fear level is so high right now that going to any group event, and then we think about last weekend, I think that the likelihood of getting people to turn out, even when things are really designed to try to be really reaching out, it's just a really hard time.
Okay, thank you for that. When
Yeah,
I thought about the rangers in their national
Yeah.
park uniforms as
Right,
government employees might have.
Yeah, the idea behind not asking people, requiring people to register is the fear of ICE and the government, big bad government. And I know I talked to people at the Catholic Church in Half Moon Bay, and I couldn't hardly keep flyers for the hike. It was in Spanish at the church. And so I know there's interest,
Yeah.
but something is getting in the way from interest to actually being there.
It may have just been bad timing.
Unfortunate reality.
Yeah. Okay, any other comments, thoughts? Well, we have Claudia already thinking about next year.
I did a story on Sea Forager hike that's on my website. Took a
Oh.
bunch of pictures and stuff, so you could post that to GCSD website to, so it's next to Sea Forager, so you get an idea of what the experience is like. It was really, really fun. Gotta have him back out again.
Oh, great.
It was great.
When we
In
get
fact,
to.
one guy came from San Jose, and it was Eventbrite.
Oh, that he just found it on Eventbrite.
Yeah.
He came from Palo Alto.
Palo Alto, sorry,
Oh.
thank you.
When
But
we
over
get
the hill.
to next newsletter, we'll be collecting up the pictures from various events for the next
Great,
newsletter.
great.
I just wanted to say, Barbara Dye, member of the board, congratulations to all of you, and thank you for all your hard work in making the recreation program happen. It's really a great asset to our community, and we're actually doing something. It's great. Well done.
Thanks, Barbara.
Okay. Well, speaking of doing something, one of the other, so I'm going to try to keep us a little bit closer to time, so we're 15 minutes behind now. But also keep us to our work plan, so that we focus on those things, and when we have things that we'd like to add to our work plan, they go, to board, so board can add them to our work plan. One of the things on our work plan was to work on improving public outreach. So at our last meeting, we talked about potentially doing a survey. And just a reminder from the notes from that meeting, when we've done our meetings, our Burnham Park meeting or our Balboa meeting, we've had, I think, 70 to 80 people show up. And at the Quarry Park master plan meetings, which had a lot more advertising than ours, they still had somewhere between 60 and 80 people show up. So we noted that in 2015, when the Parks Committee started, they did a community survey by mail to the community and had more than 600 responses. So we agreed to develop a proposal for a new community survey to try to get that breadth of responses to be in addition to and supplementing what we hear in a more intimate setting when we do the public meetings. So a subcommittee of volunteers, Michelle, Pat, and I met along with Delia and Claudia a few weeks ago. And actually, in the space of about an hour, between a draft Pat had done and a draft I had done, we knocked out most of the draft that is in your packet. So what we'd like to do, first, we have two things on this agenda item. One is to review the survey as a full PAC for any suggestions and or comments, and the Parks Committee of the board, which consists of Directors Dye and Seaton, is also planning another public meeting, which may happen concurrent to the survey, or, while the survey's out there or after. But I asked Director Dye to describe that meeting and what kind of support they'd like from PAC for that as well. So it's really going to be both and. We'll continue the public meetings, and we'll have something that goes more broadly to the community if the board approves this. So the purpose of tonight is to agree a proposal to the board to do the full community survey. So I'll stop talking because I've seen a lot of it, and let you take a look and tell us what you think.
Well, the one thing I noticed, could they put a map, just so people that don't know where it is, like something to go around before the survey?
I think the current suggestion is that we do a newsletter and have the survey like a fourfold within a newsletter, kind of like our guide went
So
inside
they
the
know where the
newsletter.
Burnham Park is and.
So that we could take more space to
Okay.
Actually, that's a
explain more
great
about it.
idea. I have a perfect map for that.
Oh,
I think
right on.
we could include it.
Yeah. We know where it is, but
I think my only other suggestion is if you could increase the font size for part 1, part 2, and part 3, because all blends. There's not a really good separation from the.
Part 1, Part 2, and Part 3.
Yeah, because, it's pretty clear, one's Burnham strip. My eyesight's not that great, so I have my glasses on, and I still have
The header?
Yeah, that's it. Summer recreation and community, but they should be big enough so they stand out from everything else. on the
We
same side.
definitely
agree,
will
like-
have,
Burnham Park
Banner.
survey.
Banner, yep, banner.
we'll definitely, if the board
18 to
approves it,
24 point,
have,
bold.
have Marnie design it. Marnie design it rather than my word skill.
I used to be a typesetter.
I'll just say that we need the incentive. The incentive makes a big difference. The Spangler's gift card, the drawing for that is an attention getter, and my years of experience said you have to have an incentive.
Yeah, I mean, we could put on the newsletter itself, like, win a Spangler's gift card. I think from my Spangler's experience, I'd probably break that up into 3 $25 gift cards rather than 1 $75. Because I buy one meal at a time, just.
Well, I think it's quite a list of things.
Let's give
Put
out
out here.
4 Spangler's gift cards, 1 for 100 and 3 for 25.
What was that, Barbara?
She suggests
It was,
more
you know,
Spanglers,
I mean,
more winners.
If the incentive is important, and I defer to Pat's experience, I mean, the cost of this, compared to the cost of mailing it and printing it and everything, that's minor. And if that's an important thing in getting a response, let's up it and say, 5.
Four $50 gift cards or something.
Yeah, something,
Right, right.
yeah.
Oh, she said
Works.
5, I'm gonna write 5.
I mean, it's going to the board to look at next week anyway, so I can't speak for the whole board, but it just seems to me that if this is a good thing to do, let's really do it.
Yeah. We did try to put on the amenities list for the park, just about everything that was on the drawings.
Has anybody timed how long it took the survey, to physically take the survey, to read it and deliberate, to try to?
It
No.
varies.
Yeah.
If it's an online survey, it's faster because you have skips
Yeah.
and things come up right away. In general, if it's a read-only hard copy, it takes another minute or so longer. But we're approaching 9-10 minutes.
Yeah,
And it should be 7 to 8 minutes.
that's what I was,
People burn out.
Cut down some options.
people's attention span, yeah, is usually around 5.
It's longer than
I
it's
think,
usually.
I think the survey, if you really want to get great responses, you've got to put some time in front of the post office Saturday and Sunday. Everybody gets their mail in El Granada from the post office.
mostly everybody will at some point in time be at the post office on Saturday, Sunday.
Yeah.
I've heard about 80%, because remember, we
Mhm.
go from Miramar to Clipper Ridge, and some of those people get mail deliveries.
Miramar doesn't go to El Granada as much.
Yeah.
I get mail to my house, but my neighbor doesn't.
Yeah, but definitely, we get a lot of people by going to the post office, and,
So a challenge, we'll get into hows and whys, but a challenge with doing that is you have no control over duplicate entries.
right, unless they,
And that's a problem when you have
You're
incentives.
gonna get
I was about to say, yeah, is there a unique household number or something?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
When
There's
did-
some ways we can talk about that later.
Pat has offered to host the online in Spanish and English on the school, is it the school system?
One of a couple, yeah, that I have.
So we would have an option of paper or online. So we need a QR code for the online.
Yeah.
Right, Michelle?
I'd like to suggest, I think we shouldn't put in anything that we're not gonna build. We're not gonna build a swimming pool. So now, did you make the copies, Julia?
Saltwater Harbor.
Oh, I
That's a
want,
start.
I wanna look at it. So if there's gonna be one in the harbor, great. But we're not gonna spend hundreds of thousands of dollars on one item when there's so many things that people wanna
But what
consider.
if it's the most highly demanded thing?
Oh, yeah, I know, people want it, but, well, like she said, it's gonna be in the harbor, so they can go, that's part of our district.
Well, I mean, this could be just, having that question, I
It
thought a
just
lot about
provides
it.
us data on the demand.
This is a recreation needs study, this is not what the district can build study,
Yep.
survey, as far as I understand it. And so, some of these things, the district may not be ever able to build, but,
It was
I think
specifically
it's
in
pretty
the
strong,
community
you know,
center versus
a small
the
swimming
park.
pool, maybe that directs,
Well, a
The planning
community
for the next
pool
10
would not be a
years.
small one. If you're gonna build a community pool, it's gotta be a big,
They come in different sizes.
yeah. Pacifica, as an
I
example.
mean, there could be, yeah, I agree, I don't think it would be like on Burnham Park, but, I mean, there is a need, and I don't, you know.
So right now, the
I
community
don't think-
recreation center is a what if, and, could be the fire station, could be the fire station has to be knocked down, could be something else altogether. So we're just trying, that section really is a what if section. If we had a community recreation center, what might you want at it, right?
Right.
This ring in total will cost a couple of million. The pool itself will maybe be $1 million because there's so few jurisdictions and so little permitting. And I think, when you consider that we're a coast side with 30,000 people and we don't have a public pool, we have a 40% adult Latino population, 50% under 18 Latino population, and they can't swim. It means they can't try out for swim team, they can't try out for the surf team, water polo, junior guards, and they can't be safe in the ocean. So I think there's a moral, sort of gouge here that, the people want it, and I think Claudia is willing to work on grants and things like that. She was really excited about it.
well, where are we gonna put it?
In the harbor.
Oh, that I agree with.
Yeah, so, I mean,
Yeah, but I
you
said,
have
I
to-
don't think we can build a pool
Well,
here in the community.
I think that GCSD has a responsibility to contribute to the pool. The county may chip in as well. The yacht club may chip in, and I also think that there's grants out there. But I think if you're gonna be a Parks and Recs, and you need to, there's an opportunity for a pool, we should at least look at it. On all the bio and a lot of the early, initial assessment stuff has already been done, because it was done 3 years ago when the yacht club had a different design. And a yacht club member who, she's an environmental, scientist, and she basically did the eel grass, she did some biology. There were about 3 or 4 other tests that were done. So I know that as this gets out there, all that information will come to you.
I think that if we think right now, the community rec center could be anything. It could be virtual, which means it could be a pool there, it could be a room here, it could be pickleball court there. And so I think we shouldn't think
Where-
about where it is in the district.
restrict,
It's just collecting information on, if we're considering a community recreation center, virtual or all in one place, what would people want in it? So if we had a huge response saying, I want a swimming pool, that gives the district some data to say, well, maybe we should kick in some funds for this.
Nancy, could I just make a comment? The last survey that we did, we were trying to gain an idea of what people wanted, just in general. So I'm just wondering if maybe we should, or you should rethink the survey questions in terms of, do you want to ask, what do you want in general versus what do you want to see in Burnham Park? Maybe somehow we can.
It's not being asked about.
Yeah, that one section is.
It is, yeah,
It's-
it
I
is.
think it says where the pool is.
Right, but what I'm
is
saying
small
is
community
just
center.
decide, really what are we trying to get out of the survey?
Well, I think what we proposed was, and partly given some direction from the board and partly given some direction from our work plan, is find out what people want in Burnham Park, which
Right.
already has some constraints. And we already have done one big listening session for Burnham Park
I
a year
can't
ago.
read this. So- my eyes are so bad I can't read.
So there's a section on Burnham
I'm
Park.
not sure where the pool is, but.
The pool is in the community recreation center
The
section.
recreation center part, okay. But
So-
anyways, I just wanted to emphasize that if you want to specifically get it, what people want to see on Burnham Park, maybe we can somehow gear it so that that is very well understood versus what people want
Yeah.
in general, so.
That actually is the first part.
Yeah, she's got it blocked out into 3 parts, Burnham Strip, and
Yeah.
then, I think we just have to, the titling, as I
Yeah,
said,
we-
we'll make it more obvious.
Make it more clear in its
Yeah.
3 chunks.
But the other thing we did too was we asked for priorities, and this is just more of a yes or a no, so I don't know if that's going to be important to gather or not.
Well, let me just comment. We're trying to do 2 things. We're trying to have a longitudinal survey that tracks what the community wants for recreation. And we now have over a 5-year time frame. And it may be another 5 or 10 years before we have the next survey, and things could change over time. And so we purposely, at least in the draft, have kept some questions, a few questions from the first survey, so that we can track those things over time. On the other hand, we wanted to get more, as Nancy said, we wanted to get more specific questions about what do you want in Burnham Park? What do you see? And then there's the third part, I think, is looking to the future. What's the most important thing that you want? And that may be unaffordable. It may be easy to do, but let's not hold ourselves back and refuse to ask that question based on today's perception of how much money we have, how we can do it, how we can move forward. We're just asking the community, what do you think?
I think since the sub-team met, I added on the rec center, which is probably here's all the things we heard on the first wish list that we don't have accommodated in Burnham Park. But let's still put them out there to recheck interest. So I did add in tennis, basketball, pickleball, because there are things you might be able to do, behind the fire station.
Or Granada Elementary.
Or the elementary school. Since I've been playing outside at the Boys Girls Club on one court, you can do basketball, volleyball, pickleball, and tennis. And it's a multi-use court, so.
Where is that?
Behind the Boys and Girls Club gym, behind the gym, they have their multi-use courts.
Something, I don't think I see, I think a climbing wall would be pretty
That's a good idea.
desirable.
That's a
Mhm.
hot
You know,
trend.
I don't know, as far as like some
Love
kind of
that.
gym, I think those are usually privately run, but, some kind of wall would be,
Pacifica has a climbing wall.
Do they? Yeah, I think that would be real popular.
At the Burnham meeting a year ago, somebody, he actually drew it for me, he gave me a website for it, where we have landscape walls, say we do some build-up
Yeah.
so that you can sit on top of it, just on that landscape wall, make it also, so, the little ones has the handholds for them to climb and integrate it.
Absolutely.
So maybe should add that,
I think that's a good
to Burnham.
element in. I think exactly. I think Burnham because, yeah, I do remember that being
They don't have to be
suggested.
40 feet tall, right? They just.
No,
right.
no, I think if you had something that was just openly accessible, you wouldn't want it to be
Yeah.
very tall because, you know, you gotta control that spot.
More
so
like
it's
bouldering.
Set up
Yeah,
with,
yeah,
you
more
know,
like
like the
bouldering.
proper safety.
And
Yeah,
and
you
you
have,
have
like,
to have it
horizontal climbing.
staffed.
And you want to
If it's
protect
big
the
and-
ocean view
and
too.
tall.
That's part of
Yeah.
the reason for the Burnham Park is to protect the ocean view.
Yeah, it could be could be more like boulders.
There's a lot.
Disc
It
golf.
always comes
Sorry.
up.
Yeah,
Comes
it comes up. A lot of people ask for it.
Yeah. They did roll that out of
Yeah,
Burnham
disc golfers are noisy.
because of the throwing.
Just golf would be good in Quarry Park, but not on the Burnham Strip. Nothing flying on Burnham Strip or rolling.
Go right in.
Well, I'm going to be negative one more time.
Okay.
The tennis court too, I think is asking for a lot to spend and something that's got to be constructed and everything. Unless, what did you say, all four of those things are in one?
All four on one court. It's worth going to look.
Yeah,
They're
have to go
open
see.
during the summer. And I've been to another club that, over in San Jose that has the multiple sport court. But you can move the basketball things out of the way or move them back. The net can be low or high or take it off if you're playing basketball.
Badminton, volleyball,
Badminton, yeah, all of them.
squash, or not squash, but pickleball, all that can be accommodated on that same flat surface.
Yeah, on the same court.
Another idea, because this brings up a good question, is, you know, we could split that Burnham Park question number 2 into a new column. You know, should it be included in Burnham Park? Yes, no, maybe. Outside Burnham Park or in another potential location, so that we get an idea, well, a tennis court is not acceptable.
I don't
say,
think a
for
tennis,
instance,
I don't think we
on-
should offer a tennis court on Burnham Strip at all.
Well, let the public decide. I agree with you.
No, because, no, I agree with Fran in this regard. You can't have something
Flying
that's gonna
balls.
have flying balls or a chain link fence to enclose.
On
That's-
Obispo Road, I
That's a,
agree.
that's a bad, that's just a
I
bad
know.
location, so
I'm on the record, I'm not supporting it either.
Yeah.
I'm just saying, from principle,
I don't think we should
how
even ask
about,
it.
but we can have, so, the idea is, I just thought, have one park, Burnham Park, outside of Burnham Park. Those are the headings.
But
And
we
would
have,
you be
we have them
interested
on the
in
rec
that?
center list, so,
All
which
of
doesn't
those?
mean, we have, I think I didn't do volleyball, tennis, pickleball, basketball on the rec center list.
Okay.
I mean, would
So
that
then it
mean-
means
And
we
swim.
have it outside
So we
of
have
Burnham
it and
Park.
we will know what interest there is. It doesn't mean it has to go to rec center, but we'll know how much interest there is.
Okay, okay.
We,
As long as
we were
have
talking
it.
about time in the survey, and I was gonna suggest that, you know, in the first survey for Burnham, you know, you've got like agree, disagree. And then in the next two surveys, you've got this like scale. Scale takes more time. People either want it or they don't. Just go agree, disagree, and then maybe you can ask a sub-question like what Pat was asking, but ask it as a sub-question
Yeah.
as opposed to,
I like the agree, disagree, and no opinion, because sometimes people kind of go, I don't care if it's there or not. I want to know
that's
that they
good.
don't
Yeah,
object.
yeah, right, yeah,
Yeah,
don't object,
uh-huh.
yeah.
Um,
But giving them 5 tiers just becomes more complicated. I'm always like, gosh, you know, I don't know, it's 2, 3.
Does that
Yeah.
fit
Or it's
interest
yes or
in-
no, I'm, but that's just me personally.
Yeah.
It's-
Look at the list for summer rec,
What page is that?
because I like having 3 choices rather than 4 or 5 myself, but agree,
Well, you've got,
disagree, no
you've got
opinion.
3 choices
Yeah.
for Burnham, and then you've got
4.
5 choices for summer rec. and
4.
Oh, 4, sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It's
4.
just, I thought, I agree, disagree, no opinion might not fit, but I'm happy to axe one of, like, the not at all interested.
Well, the more,
Pat had
the
actually
more
5, so I'm
options you
feeling
have, the more accurate the reading of what they want. So if they're jumping up and down, this is the greatest thing in the world, they're gonna put very interesting. If they're, yeah, it'd be okay, they put not very interesting. And you would know something from that, you would know more than if it was yes, no. So many things are not yes, no. I'm an academic, sorry, I had that training.
I'm a lazy
but,
academic.
But, you know, I don't think 4 is conceptually very hard to come up with choices, you know, to understand. I could do that.
As a mathematician, I agree with more data points.
There's a data one. I didn't know you were a mathematician.
Pat, isn't this one of the things you do professionally, surveys?
I have 5 surveys out right now.
Yeah, I mean,
I did cut it
It's
from
very
5 to
good.
4.
How do you feel about that? Strong, agree?
Good point.
I'll put you down for 5.
There were 5, and I did make it 4, so I think we made that compromise. Any other comments? If we, and just kind of, is everybody okay with proposing a survey to the board before I ask for a motion? Can we have a motion to propose a survey to the board with just a couple things noted?
I would.
More gift cards, include a map, add a climbing wall or boulders,
And headings.
and improve headings.
I would say if we have to chop, let's chop 13.
Yeah.
13, where you?
Question 13, which is on page 5, is
How frequently do you and members here also visit each local park?
That's okay with
That's
me, too.
tracking from, the first survey, but in a sense, we have that.
and 10 and 11 give us some longitudinal data.
Give us some sense of that. And I will, I'm willing to take whatever comes from the board, we give to the board and comes back from the board. I'm willing to put that online, and we can have a draft survey to review, and you can see how long it takes, and you can see how difficult it is or it isn't.
And why do you want to drop 13?
Just if it's too long,
Attention
if the
span.
survey takes too long, and we
It
have to
doesn't add
cut
that
out
much.
something be said, because we're trying to get it down to 7 or 8 minutes and instead of 10, that may be one place that we could chop. I like the
Yeah.
question, but let's see, that's why I'm not saying take it out now,
Okay.
but that would be one place that we could save some time by removing that question.
Okay. The one thing I would ask so that we could keep it moving, because as Barbara noted, the Parks team had talked about sending out this along with a newsletter and an invitation to the next public meeting, kind of all in one go. Is committee okay if post-board meeting, if they approve it and we need to do some wrangling, we do that with the subcommittee, which is Michelle, Pat, and me, rather than call a special meeting to review it?
Well, I'm supportive of that. One option is just send an invitation and a link to take the survey.
Oh, absolutely, yeah, that's a
And,
good idea.
as a pretest, this wouldn't be official words because we
We're
are not going to be completing the survey. We're privileged agency people, so it isn't right that we do. You could have your significant other, but not us.
Yeah. So we can test it with everybody on PAC, but I'm just trying to not have to schedule another meeting before we get it out.
Right.
But of course, you'll all see it, and that's a good idea, let everybody run the test. Great. Can we have a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve or to send, are we sending this survey to the board?
Propose to the board with noted revisions.
Yes, to propose to the board with noted changes.
A second.
Any further discussion? Any more public comments? All in favor?
Aye.
Ayes? Okay, unanimous. All Michelle.
Excuse me, Nancy, who was the second under the?
Michelle?
Michelle.
Paul and Michelle, first and second.
Thanks, ladies.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay, for the second part of this, don't go far, Barbara. The board has a Parks Committee, Barbara and David Seaton, who I think at the June board meeting, or July, no, June board meeting, The board had agreed that the Parks Committee would progress an idea for the next public meeting, and so I'm going to hand to Barbara to describe where the Parks Committee came out on that.
Good evening, everybody. Barbara Dye, Vice President of the Board and part of the Park Committee. So we don't have subcommittees on the board, we have committees. So it's David Seaton and myself, and we worked on a proposal for this outreach event. David played a big role in designing it. And then we also, Nancy was a big help to us in kind of fine tuning it and getting this proposal ready. Is there, yeah. Sorry.
Do you need a copy, Barbara?
Sorry. So tonight, this proposal was mentioned to the board just as a report, so we didn't really have any discussion at the board level, so it's going to be discussed at the next board meeting next week. But before that, we really value the input and the involvement of the Park Committee. So I was going to explain what the idea is for the Burnham Park outreach event, ask you to help us with just feedback on the format of the meeting, dates and times, the list of amenities, which is in your packet, you already discussed briefly, and any other suggestions that you have on how to make this a valuable part of our planning process for Burnham Park. So the proposal is that there'll be the survey, which we've just talked about, and when it goes in the mail, it will also, whatever comes to people's houses will also invite them to this outreach event. Because we really want to make sure that this community feels that everybody got invited to be part of the planning department. The thinking is that we would aim it for the end of September. And right with a second meeting at the end of November on the strip itself with some plans maybe. I mean, these could slide, but this is sort of the thinking of the timing. And that in January, the board would be ready to have kind of a final workshop and give direction to our landscape architect to come up with some final designs that we would then go back to the community with. But, you know, this is a process to actually achieve the goal of having a plan, a community plan for Burnham Park. Originally, the thinking was we would do the workshop on a weekend, but the more we talked about it, the more we worried about all the families with kids who have athletic stuff and everything on weekends, and that we thought a weeknight might work better. So the thinking right now is that we would do it on a weeknight. We'd start it at 5:30 with pizza, and you know, ask people to come and have a little bit of mingling time. We would have the constraints map that you've all seen from the previous park designs, and at least two, if not all three, of the previous designs. There's one design that's just kind of a little out there, and I don't think it really serves us to put it up there, but it's not a secret. It's just, you know, a question of how helpful it is. Then we would have a presentation of the constraints, you know, the things to think about. Like, here's where the drainages are, here's where the wind is, here's where the view corridors are, all those issues. And have a list of the amenities that are the same as the ones that would be in the survey for everybody, the thing to kind of look at. So you'd have a poster that would have the list of all of them, and everybody would have their stickers, red, green, and yellow, you know, yes, no, or I don't, seems okay, but I don't feel strongly about it for that. The plan, the project, the proposal for the event would have three sort of assumptions that have already come from the board. One is that views across the site are critical, and we do not want to see anything big in the site that impacts views. Large-scale sports that are going to involve bouncing balls, and you know, it's not just balls going out in the street, it's balls going, you know, into a central, if we have a central lawn area, which seems to be pretty popular concept, you don't want something where balls are going to be, you know, zooming there, so that we want to keep that kind of activity. It's a long, skinny little park with streets on both sides, so that's another thing the board has already said. And then finally, we just can't deal with Route 1 issues. As everybody knows, the oceanward third of the property is the Caltrans right-of-way. And we really have no jurisdiction over that, and we are not going to be able to solve the problem of how to cross Route 1. We can solve trail problems and propose trails that would go down to the stoplight and so forth, and that is in our purview, but we're not going to make recommendations for what we think Caltrans should do. If this group, and I want to hear you talk about it, feels really strongly that one of those parameters is not right, I mean, I think that's something we transmit to the board for further discussion, but those are three things that I think the board has already decided. Would you agree with that?
Yes.
Yes. And then people will break into groups, they'll get the poster with the amenities, they can talk about them a little bit, and then they all get to vote, you know, green, red, yellow, for all the amenities on the list. And then each group gets a map and designates a person to draw. And this was very important to David. He wanted people to be able to have a piece of paper and mark things on the piece of paper. So they would start with the thing that got the most votes on their list and figure out what could go where. Now, of course, a lot of those things are dependent on factors that sitting in a meeting at the school or wherever, you may not be aware of. You know, there's just citing issues and so forth. But still, to have people sit there and try to say, well, if we're going to have this and this could go here and this could go there, just give people an opportunity to really look at the site and place something on it. And again, this is really in response to David's feeling that this was a really important thing that we do.
Something they did for Quarry Park at one of their
Yes,
meetings.
yeah, they had people mark things down. And by doing it in pencil, you know, we wanted this to be kind of a, you know, each group could sit there, you know, like, oh, that doesn't work, erase it, and let's move it over here. I mean, we're not creating masterpieces, we're kind of just thinking about the site. And then,
Provide erasers.
yeah, exactly. And then there'll be a report, and that takes a long time, and then in any group where there's, you know, like a minority report, that would get an opportunity to present.
If there's a major dissension.
If there's a major disagreement in any of the groups. And so the idea is that at the end, we would collect these various maps. It would really, I think, give people who care about the design for the park a chance to really look at it and think of it in terms of the space available and how would it work. How big would your parking be? Like, is there going to be parking? And, you know, just all those issues. And then we would collect the posters, which would have the stickers on them, and that gives us a real feedback of what people who bothered to come to the event feel are the most important things. And we'd collect the maps, and that would be part of putting together probably some options for the next event, which would be similar to the one we already had on the Burnham Strip itself, with some new designs that really incorporate both at that. We probably won't do it till we get feedback from the survey. So it'd be feedback from this event and feedback from the survey. And we'd have, you know, an interim event where people would see some really specific plans that incorporate, maybe one or two, that incorporate the results of the workshop and the results of the survey. And then get more feedback there, and then take it to the board, and then we start putting together a plan and thinking about phasing and getting our permits. And we make this park happen. Yes. So I really, you know, I'm sort of reaching out from the board to say, you're a really important part of our review process and our, you know, thinking about what works and what doesn't work. Do you agree with us about this general format? Do you agree with doing it on a weeknight, given that, you know, people's lives are busy? And do you have any comments on the list of amenities and things that should be changed? Any other suggestions that I should take to the board next week?
I'll make a comment. First of all, I think a workshop is a great format. It provides very different information than you get from a public meeting, where it's more grandstanding. And gives people time to think about the issues and the concerns, and really put some thought into it, whereas if they get a survey or if they are at a public meeting, you don't get that.
And they not realize not everything fits.
Right, and so I think the combination of of a workshop with public meetings, with a mail-in survey, if you put triangulating all those things will give you a very accurate opinion of what the community wants, as well as, some starts at preliminary designs and, what could be done.
Great. Well,
So
that means a lot
I'm
coming
really
from you.
supportive of that idea.
Great, well, I appreciate that, because your expertise is so important.
If you could make the map of the Burnham Strip to scale, and then you could take like a bocce court and it'd be like a little cutout, so that they could place things, because it's kind of hard to know what the scale is, you know?
I know, we talked about that, but it gets so
Too complicated?
complicated to have tons of little pieces of paper.
What you could do is, I'm sorry to interrupt.
Yeah, no, it's okay.
Go ahead.
No, that's what I'm just saying, is we actually thought about that, but it just seemed like,
Because if you had the map printed out so it was like glossy, you could use tape, and you could just move the tape around, or you could use like Post-it notes, that kind of thing. I don't know. It's just the scale thing's a little hard to, you're trying to ask people to fit things in a space that the
well,
scale
maybe
is.
there's a way to do, kind of like the drawing idea, but, I mean, we talked quite a bit about that idea. That was our original thing, but thinking of like having a pile of little pieces of paper and trying to tape them on, and then
The prep work.
coming away
Given
with
that we don't have
something
dates.
that, you come away and the pieces fall off and,
Well, no, so you place the pieces there, and then you take a picture with your phone.
You know
yeah.
what, I think you could just have the map, your sort of canvas, have like faint scale lines, like grid paper,
Oh,
and then
okay.
just just say bocce court dimensions are rough,
Yeah, maybe there's a
20
way
by
we
30,
could
and
have
then
people show
someone could just
people how
draw
big
in a
things
bocce
are.
court if they feel it, and then, you could
I like that
could
idea.
say, okay, that's
Yeah.
5 squares by 2,
Right.
and then
That's a
give
good idea.
people the
Let's see if we
information
can
of
figure, I like
what
that,
size it
yeah.
is, and then they can draw it in themselves, and they don't have to have this toolkit of bocce court and,
Like I lost,
Yeah.
I lost my
Yeah.
playground.
And if
There's my
it's a
playground.
pencil or some kind of dry erase, they could just erase it. And,
Well, we were thinking pencil,
Yeah,
having
pencil,
it
yeah.
on, making it pretty big,
Mhm.
like big enough to, we'd have big tables and it would pretty much fill up a table. So I like the idea, I think the point is really good that
That's
people
really-
need to know how
it's a really
big
good
they are on
suggestion.
the site, so we need to figure out a way for that.
Most of these things are squares or rectangles, right? And the strip itself is a square and rectangle. You're not dealing with lots of circles, right? So it should be
Right,
great
I mean,
with
the
work
plaza
around
could
it.
be a
Not talking
circle.
about design
yeah.
anyway.
Like,
Yeah.
we could say, okay, the existing skate ramp is this size.
Yeah.
It's 5 squares by 8, or,
That's a really good idea.
That,
I
that,
think we
help,
could
that
probably
helps a
do
lot with
that.
the people that don't do feet and inches or meters. You can just
Yeah.
blocks.
yeah.
I think that's a great
might-
idea. Okay,
might
good.
just make
See,
it
I knew
simple.
there was gonna be really helpful. And what do you think? Do you think a weeknight works?
I think
Yeah.
pizza will help if you're feeding them,
Yeah.
because otherwise they'll have to juggle when they're gonna have dinner and.
And you might consider daycare, childcare,
A
rather.
jump,
Childcare.
jumpy house.
I actually own a jumpy house, so that's a possibility. But you can only put a few kids in a jumpy house at a time. So-
But those parents are doing the thing, and then, they're doing their dots and stuff like that.
Yeah.
I was thinking, did you figure, we're just talking about what space we have right now to work on, which is between the Willows and
Yes.
the nursery school.
Yes.
So it's just that space. And, when our group, Midcoast Parklands, we did a whole thing on a design and what to put in there. We figured the whole park, the whole Burnham Strip. Well, now I see all the Willows take up half of it all the way to the Signal.
Take off about a fifth of it.
Yeah, it's a big, half of what we have.
Provide that place.
Yeah.
And then the parking lot, if that remains or doesn't, I hate the parking lot. I was hoping we wouldn't have it there. I was hoping we'd have the other parcel, what we call the post office lot, to use partially as parking lot, so that we could have at least the Burnham all green or park. But now, I don't know what we're gonna do. So it leaves just that one space right now that we have to work with.
But it is what we have to work
So
with,
you
and I
can't
think we
start-
can make a really
Well,
nice
all I'm
park
getting
there.
to is you can't put a lot of stuff in that one space.
I agree, and that's why.
That's
People
where
will
having
figure
the
that out.
scale will help. That's that's where
Well, I
having
just
scale-
want to make sure that's all we're talking about right now, because there's no
Yes.
way to figure a whole bunch of things.
I'd love to see the old plans. Do you have them?
Yeah, I looked for them tonight. I have several copies and I couldn't find them. So I will bring
If you
them.
can find them, I'd love to see it.
Yeah, the letter. It was a letter to Caltrans and others that were, because Caltrans was going to put the freeway right through, or they were going to move the highway
Yeah,
right through the middle of the Burnham Strip.
right.
But this was 2007. And so we did a letter to them with two copies of the plan, what we planned for the park. And we also did a second picture, putting the freeway, what we thought, all they needed to do was move the freeway back on the Caltrans right-of-way, just by the Surfers Beach. That's the only place that's eroding. And so we submitted that. But I couldn't find it tonight, otherwise I'll bring them.
I have a copy, so. The wetlands is a really important wetlands. It collects water, and then that's the water that goes over to Surfers Beach. So, I mean, it is, I think, a next project, even though we're talking about another, parks and community center. But something to think about is at some point getting the funding to do some real habitat restoration in that site, because we could end up with some nice pathways through there and some real educational opportunities about local coastal wetlands, which would be really powerful. So just another thing to think about ahead, but not at this event, because we've got our piece of land there that is what we can look at. And
Barbara, I would suggest maybe, again, formatting, that you be able to have at least 4 groups that are working concurrently. And so that means you have to have 4 maps for,
Oh, yes.
of everything.
I think we're thinking somewhere
And
between 4 and 6.
even, say for instance, I don't know where it's going to be held, probably El Granada Elementary community room, but, that's looking at what Quarry Park public meetings were like. There's going to be a lot of interest. There's going to be maybe 100 people. And so
There
you're
weren't
going
that
to need
many
to
for
split it
Quarry,
up
but
to,
yeah.
split it up into groups so that everybody feels like they have an opportunity to say
Absolutely.
something.
yes.
And so the outcome will not be one gigantic map with everything combined, because that's just going to be a
No,
mess.
No, 5 maps.
It would be maybe small groups working together, coming up together as a group on some thoughts, issues, design ideas, that sort of thing. And then later on, you're going to be combining those to try to get an overall sense of the whole audience.
I think the last Quarry Park meeting was kind of the one that got quite a lot of interest when some things were out there. It had 5 groups that I think they planned for, and then the 5th one, you may remember, was the people that the Do Nothing group formed another group. But they had 5 groups, and I think they had about 8 to 10 people per group, somewhere between 7 and 10. So, with that much interest, they still had
Right.
50, 60 people.
Yeah.
It was noisy
I don't
in
think
that
it was
room with that
100.
many people.
I think it was 50 or 60.
I think it
And
was 50 or
we would
60.
need a facilitator for each group. And I
Sure.
think K&K might be able to provide us with a few. I know Nancy has a lot of experience in that.
Claudia
so
is going to help us
Claudia
with
could
that.
do it. So that's something for us to, it's just one of the details for us to plan. But I think I think the board members should just float and, listen to, because the goal is to find out what the community wants. And I'm not sure, I think you guys should play a
If
big
there's,
role.
if there's anybody else who, likes to facilitate,
Or people who are gonna wanna jump in and
I
be
do.
part of one of the
I
group
thought you would.
discussions. So that's something that, we
I didn't
can,
want to volunteer
figure
to
out
that, but it was
That's
nice
all
of
right.
you to volunteer.
offline. But yeah, I think it's
Yeah.
good to have one person in each group going, well, do you realize that if you put it there, then there's gonna be this, that kind of
Keep them on
question.
time and on task.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I like the idea, I think the idea of having a list of amenities, and they start with the most popular one, and go down and say, okay, well, then this one gets the next most green dots, and then this one gets the next most, and so where are we gonna put that? And,
If they run out of space.
it's not gonna be
in our
perfect.
lower
I don't think
ones.
anybody's gonna be able to come out with, like, oh, we can't give it to the designers and say, here, turn this into a fancy map. But I think it's gonna give us a lot of information and make people feel like they've had a part to play.
Barbara, are you referring to most popular that night?
That night.
In that group.
Because we won't have the survey results at that point.
No.
We'll have this, and people can go, who haven't done the survey can either do it there, fill it out and turn it in, we'll have copies. Or they can,
We have to watch out for duplicates, so we'll have
well,
to think about
like,
that.
aren't people gonna have to sign these?
No, they're anonymous.
They're not gonna have their names
Yeah,
on
you
it?
don't,
Only if-
you make that an option.
Only if they want to sign, if they want to sign up for the Spangler's drawing or sign up for the newsletters, then they would give us their email and name.
And if they're
And I
interested.
think most people in this community, I don't think there's a bunch of people who are gonna fill out a ton of surveys to try to skew the results, do you think?
I don't think it's a big problem.
It is an issue. It is an issue.
I think
But I
actually
think
on the
people-
Balboa playground, there probably would have been.
Yes.
But I'm not sure on this one. On this one, we had
Right.
65 out of 70 people were positive about having a park, so.
Yeah, so
I don't know why it's anonymous.
Again, they can have the option to put their name and email, but, so, again, that's just standard survey practice.
I've run surveys online and you just track the IP address and you delete the duplicates, and occasionally do get duplicates.
There's ways to deal with that, and we will, but you gotta do
I
that,
will
because
defer
anytime you
to
have an
experts on
incentive.
surveys for that. Anything
Yeah.
else? I think
Um,
your input has been really helpful.
I would just like, you're very good at this, so I don't want to belabor the point, but this is a listening session, not a presentation.
Right.
So the board, the committee, PAC should be listening, not talking. And if we're guiding the discussion, that would be, well, not my opinion, not the board's opinion, not the committee's opinion, but what is your opinion, John Q., Mary Q. Public?
Given our three board
Yes,
level
right.
set
Yes.
requirements.
I think it was a very, very short
Right,
presentation
right.
Yeah.
just for the
Right.
constraints map and the constraints the board has
So
put
the
up.
facilitators have to, know how to do that without influencing things.
Right.
And anybody who, the rest of us are, board members are just gonna float. What you guys on the committee do, I think is, I don't know.
Yeah. The facilitators have to be empowered to kick out any board members who try to join the group and join the discussion.
I mean, I think our,
Matthew, you wanna go say something?
I have every intention of putting red, yellow, and pink dots on the map.
Yeah, okay.
Why don't
Yeah, and that's the other thing is we,
get the vote?
yes, we,
Because you get it at the meeting. You have a big share of voice already.
but I do think we don't give up our right, if we wanna just be, if we wanted to vote on the stickers, we could do that.
You
But
know what I'm worried
I
about.
don't think
I
we-
think it's like a nudge, if they see us voting, then that'll encourage them to vote.
Yeah. I don't know, we can, everybody's conscience, or, how they feel about how this is going, there's only 5 of us to decide, so. And then you guys, I think if you want to participate, as long as people aren't dominating and trying to force their opinion on others because of their position, I think people have a right to have a position. And you guys are more informed than anybody else who's going to be there, so. All right, I think I have a couple changes to make, and then I'll present it to the board, and I'll write up a little staff report, Delia, for next week's meeting, and we'll pick a date.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
thank you.
I'm going to try to motor through the next things. The next item is the status, one of the other things on our work plan is to continue to advocate for a pump track to be built in Quarry Park. I went to the last week's Mid-Coast Community Council meeting and met the new executive director of San Mateo County Parks Foundation, who are doing actually a lot of cool things. San Mateo County Parks doesn't have like an assessment that gets at a budget, so they fill in. Over their 20 years in existence, they've raised about $12 million to supplement things for parks. They're currently doing things like, some of you who've been around Quarry Park may have noticed they're doing a lot of work around cleaning up the community garden. That's actually the Parks Foundation is paying for that. They reimburse for parking passes given out at the San Mateo County Health Clinics to kids to get them to encourage to get out and exercise in parks for the 2 parks that charge parking fees. the Edgewood Park butterfly restoration they do interpretive signs, and so on. She said the one thing that they're really focused on, their primary thing, is needing to connect kids to parks more, get the next generation working in parks by age 10. So when she said that, a light went off for me, and I said, so in Quarry Park, there is a pump track last we saw on the master plan, and GCSD has made a resolution to support it and to provide unspecified funding. But if it needed more funding, or if it needed more advocacy, would you be interested in doing that? And she said that's exactly the sort of thing that we'd be interested in, because it's kids of the same age. So the idea is, they're doing work in Quarry Park. Parks isn't sitting around waiting for the master plan to be done. But the latest thinking from Peggy, the acting director who talked to NCC in June, was that maybe by early 2020 they would have the master plan done. So the idea is maybe we should put together a committee rather than waiting till it's all done, and just start the work. I'm going to find my notes I wrote about this, of putting together a task force to get a jump on developing at least a proposal to make to county parks once they are ready with their master plan. Because remember, everything that's in the master plan isn't funded. It's just vaporware until it gets funded and has a plan, and they get the money to labor to actually do it. So the idea is, could we put together a task force, maybe partnering with the Parks Foundation as well as somebody from Parks, to get a jump on developing a proposal that, I don't know, they would know better than I, what space is needed, any design considerations, any permit challenges that they see, get an overall cost estimate so that we know what to pitch to GCSD for, and maybe what to pitch to the Parks Foundation for, and to have a plan for volunteer recruitments, because I keep hearing that, similar to moving the ramp, there will be a small army of volunteers ready to push dirt around and make it happen. So my idea was, could we propose to the board to get a jump on forming this task force? Since Paul has been talking about this for the 5 years that he's been on this committee, I asked Paul if he would be willing to be on point to make that kind of proposal or put together that kind of task force. And I just want to say, what do you think?
Yes. I'm on board with that.
You do?
That's great.
Again, looking back at some of the Quarry meetings and informal meetings, they've said more than once that the district has to come forward with a proposal and has to lead there, and then they will support. So it's not they take the lead and we support them, it's we take the lead on it and they support our proposal. So I think that's right on.
I think whether it's seeing if we can get some sort of information or sneak peek on what they maybe have in their plan, or if we just kind of go off what we remember was the popular, because obviously the location's key, that was a pretty big deal,
I think
And
you should choose the location.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, that was
Drainage
kind
Or
of,
proposal
It's here,
location.
and this is what it looks like, and this is what it costs, and this
yeah,
is who's
and
gonna
just
do it.
do that and have some concepts. Yeah, I think.
Because they're not going to be able to figure
sounds
it out,
like
because they're not
fun.
pump track
They're
people,
not, yeah. Yeah.
Yep.
Well, the last place they had it got a big negative push at the last meeting they had, which was April of last year, so 16 months ago. That's where they had it right next to the playground.
Yeah, that really came out of.
That came out of nowhere, and nobody wanted
There
it there.
wasn't anything in the.
Who suggested it, the county?
The county, on their previous plans, it had been in various places, over by their storage area, over by the EG school. It had never been in that meadow, and on the last iteration, it was like they took every amenity suggested and shoved it into
Sort
that
of because
acre.
their dogs run and stuff like that, so there was
Or
a
kids
lot of
play, or-
kids play, dogs run,
So
yeah.
I think it'd be
just
popular to say not there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I don't know where it came out on their final plan, because we haven't seen
Yeah,
what
it
came
wasn't
after that
any
meeting.
of the suggestions.
Yeah.
May
Miss
I
Pat?
suggest we offer more than one site, you know, on county property, now that they have all the hills and all
Murata
the
East
land,
and-
that maybe, if not back, because, let me tell you, the county rangers finally did mow all the other side of the parking lot, and so it's now available for the dog park. That people have been urging
also
for
left off the
years
park.
also, for off-leash dog park.
Yeah,
So they mowed the entire, almost that entire space, up to where the
Storage
container
areas, yeah.
thing is, and their storage container. And so they mowed both sides of that little road that goes up there. So you could use one side for the small dogs and the other side for the big dogs. And I'm talking about on the Wicklow property. or
Right, I
the
don't think we were
Old
talking about dogs. I'm confused.
Well, because that's also where you want to put the, or isn't
That was-
that
No,
where the
That was one of the
proposal was for
locations
the?
proposed for a pump track.
That's what I remember being the most popular spot was essentially near that container.
Yeah.
Yeah,
You
Right
know,
at that end.
and I don't know if they have water out there, but they might, and if, you
there's
know,
the pond above it.
true.
Sediment pond.
You can hook up.
But
I mean,
no,
that's
the
pretty
reason,
far up there.
There is a
the
water
point I
system
was
for the
making
garden.
though,
They can
is
hook
that
up
all
to
of
it
that,
really
as
easy.
I've said before, I hate seeing everything in that, just in that area, that vicinity. So maybe if we have another area to put it, if you agree, let's go look around.
Yeah.
And see, and propose more than one area, because.
That's not hard.
Because dogs and bicycles don't really go together, and everybody, believe me, there's a lot of traffic, especially on the weekends, and I see bicyclers coming up and down more and more these last couple of weeks. They're really riding a lot through there.
That's fabulous.
That's good.
So,
Building a community.
but I've seen also on the weekends, cars, trucks coming and going,
That's good.
people walking,
using
strollers,
Parks
dogs, everything. It's
Yeah.
all converging in that
So-
one street.
So what Paul I think is getting at is for like people that are experts that will design and advise for at least the pump track section, they would have intrinsic knowledge of
Where the best-
requirements would be. Dog requirements are totally different than a pump track. You need a certain gradient, you need water accessibility, you definitely want it partially shaded of some sorts, you definitely want a slope to it, it can't be absolutely flat. It usually needs to be not a big block, it needs to be almost rectangular. So there would be very few places within general accepted that would actually work with the numbers you need as far as space and slope and things of that
They,
nature.
one of the other plans had up Murata East as well.
Yeah, they did, and there were, yeah, I don't think a lot of the people that proposed where we go actually knew what is required
Yeah.
to build it, and no one's actually consulted any sort of professionals that would say, no, you can't, that won't work, it's too flat, it's, the soil won't be amenable to any sort of drainage. So I think having a few key experts telling you what is possible before you put out, for suggestions of where it should go to tell
So
you.
the task force should really evaluate and make proposals on location.
Yeah.
There's tons of stuff.
There's a
online
lot of
about
things to,
pump
I mean, I
tracks.
think too,
We don't use it.
public restroom accessibility is important for,
That is,
now, I mean, if they had
Similar
that
to
in
the
Murata
skate park,
East,
I heard
that'd be
visibility
great,
is important.
visibility is highly important.
That's
don't
where
know.
I'm thinking
not
is
looking
at
another
this go
spot for
where I
it.
Yeah,
can see
Right
and
off
if they
that
had
road that goes up
a
the hills.
restroom, I mean, it doesn't, and the one thing they proposed at Murata East was the spot right next to the
School.
elementary school, which was like kind
Near
of
the
right in
watershed.
front of everyone's face.
Water.
And the people there were pretty
Yeah.
super, I mean, they were beyond adamant about not having anything there.
Let's,
And
I,
then, I don't know.
We don't
Who is
Anyway,
they?
what-
now.
I'm gonna call time on,
Yeah.
I think that's why we need a task force.
Yes,
To really go through that and make a cogent, informed proposal.
yes.
And incorporate, people who know what they're talking about, and county, and I think Parks Foundation, I have the ladies' card. But I think
be
involving
great.
them for some other funding and some focus on kids and what kids need.
Absolutely.
Would be
No,
great.
thank you. I'm
great.
glad that you
Yeah.
made that connection.
Who wants to be on the task?
Who wants to be on the task force?
Good.
Rick, Michelle,
If you
Paul?
need more.
Perfect.
Susan?
Well, and do you need the experts too, to be on it?
We would have to get
I
their
think that'll
advice.
be,
yes.
yeah, it's gonna have to be somewhat, I mean, this is just concept, like loose, it wouldn't be, I think, trying to put something out there and say, and really have people focus, that this would be the actual design, I think that's, I think the concept idea is.
It's gonna have to go through permitting and environmental review and all of the
Yeah.
county bureaucracy, but I just didn't want us to sit for another year waiting for that and then take a year to do this.
No, come to the
it's-
table with something to present.
Yeah, and then it will be modified from there. So, I'll propose a motion since I'm not gonna lead this one. Make a motion to propose to the board to form a task force to develop a proposal for pump track in Quarry Park, possibly in collaboration with San Mateo County Parks and San Mateo County Parks Foundation, if they want to play. Sound good?
Yeah, I'll
Second?
that.
Nancy proposes, Pat seconds. Further discussion? From the peanut gallery? No? All in favor? All right. Unanimous? Okay. Next thing,
I also think we should regularly advocate and put some pressure on for the completion of the Quarry Park Master Plan.
that's pretty much the reason I go to MCC meetings now, to
Yeah.
sit next to the county person.
Say,
Get some
how
pressure.
come, what happened?
Why is
It
it
was
taking
almost
so
done,
long?
and now it's like the secret semi-final plan that nobody gets to see.
Because they say, because they've got so many other priorities.
Hmm.
Other things they're working on the whole peninsula.
Because we don't have it.
Yeah.
The foundation.
We're always last.
The foundation executive director suggested that once they get a permanent head of parks, because they have an acting
That's the
director,
problem.
she thinks some things will accelerate.
It's a shame.
Okay, let's accelerate. The meeting with Elgram, another thing on our work plan was to work with the school district to consider improving existing facilities at El Granada Elementary School. This came a little bit out of the first Burnham meeting. If we don't have basketball at Burnham, could we improve that? Rick mentioned at the last meeting, it's not very accessible. There was a walkthrough that Director Dye and Paul ended up doing with the principal there. So Paul, do you want to give us a briefing
so-
on how that came out?
Yeah, I have my notes from that walk, but,
I didn't bring it.
so, yeah, I mean, there was a couple, let me just find it, because, basically, we got there and, met in the parking lot, so we kind of started talking about what we ran into first. They didn't have any, like, hey, this is a prioritized list, it wasn't, very, it was just very casual. But anyway, they, I mean, the one thing that they were talking about is they are doing, they have plans to do some pretty major renovations soon. So there's a chance that anything that we,
Do you know if they're
Anything you
gonna
improve
expand
could be
beyond
demolished.
the area they already have? Are they
so
gonna-
that's the thing, is they have additional property towards the highway.
Oh,
They
They
have,
do?
yeah, and we weren't exactly clear, but it was potential for,
Up track?
I don't know, yeah. I mean, I think there's an idea that there's some sort of plan to do a bike path along there to
Yeah.
to
That's
connect.
part of the coastal.
You
Yeah,
know,
the
so-
parallel trail is gonna come on there.
Yeah, so, and I don't know, I mean, I'm sure the timeline and all that is very,
The parallel trail from Miramar to Coronado, I remember from MCC meeting, is actually funded and in planning. And I think it's supposed to be built in early 2020.
Oh, that's really nice.
Yeah, so that was the one practical thing that we could possibly do because of the construction they're about to undergo, which would be to fund a connector trail
Yes.
up to the parking lot of the school, because on the weekend, that parking lot is available.
The plan has a connector to the school
Yep.
for the parallel trail.
Yeah, well, we could potentially facilitate something there to make residents of El Granada able to access that bikeway and the trail from that position. So
Oh,
that
I
was
see.
really given, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to jump on what you're saying,
No,
Paul, but
I'm
given
trying to
the
find
fact
the
that
email I
the
sent.
principal would like an
Yeah, you just
entire
sent it
new
to me.
school there.
I
They're
don't
gonna
like
do
it.
major renovations. There's gonna be
Wow.
a construction yard. There's
Yeah.
gonna be all kinds of things. So there's
My
really,
kids will be going there.
our notion that we could maybe help develop some facilities are gonna have to wait till all this construction's done.
Right.
So, it was very nice that they invited us, but.
Yeah, I don't know, I can't find my
But
notes.
Barbara, was there any discussion about using some of the existing open space play areas for the new buildings? Was there any idea of where the new buildings would go?
Well, it's
Yeah.
my sense was they don't even know if there's gonna be new buildings. They may just be rehabbing the existing buildings,
Well,
but
Oh, thank you. I
certainly,
don't know why.
all of that's gonna happen sometime in the next, I guess, 2 years. I think it's like in 2 years that project might start. And even if they're not gonna expand the footprint of the current school, like, part of that whole area where there's the running trail, and that's something they'd love to have, is a better surfaced running trail. But that area is probably gonna be a construction yard.
Right.
So, right now, I think we just have to wait. It's an idea that this land might be available for us to work with them, but given the scale and the scope of the potential construction there, it's not gonna happen in the next couple of years.
Maybe in a best-case scenario, we can plan with them and work with them to incorporate some additional recreational facilities and provide fencing so that it's available publicly, but that's 5 years down the road.
Yeah, I think they had some ideas that sounded good, but the biggest issues were the upcoming construction, and then also the fact that it's restricted access.
Yeah.
I mean, you kind of, so, maybe, I don't know, just thinking, maybe, like, something could be incorporated into the construction plans that would also, allow for, like, community area, like, maybe down by the highway. I mean, it seems like that would be the only area
Yeah,
where you could
you-
actually make something open to the public outside of the actual, if they're having a bike path run through there someday anyway. So,
It'd be nice if there was some area where you could access from outside without having to go through the school.
yeah,
So
yeah.
that,
Or
so that you
take up
don't have to go
parking.
through the after-school care to get to it. Because, if they've got extra sort of land, that's really the place to put the combo court, pickleball, basketball, volleyball, tennis, and so on, in a nice big flat area where they already have a big playground.
Yeah,
As an example,
You
the
know-
high school has really nice tennis courts that are open to the public and they're heavily used.
Yep.
Yeah.
yeah, if you had that, and then, you already have fencing and everything there, you have a school right there, so it's not so much of a view situation.
Just the main concern that's been brought up, at least in my household, and we've talked to the principal as well, is in this day and age of security and school shootings and things of that nature, as a parent, I would absolutely vote no of any public access during any school hours, of not people that don't belong at the school hours
Which
during
includes
any-
after-school care.
Which includes almost till 7 o'clock on weeknights, and there's summer school that leads out most of the year. So summertime, you're not even gonna be allowed to walk, because there's summer school
Yeah.
on site, there's CCP till 7 o'clock at night, so it's really hard. I've tried to go play there with my kids, and I get run out. And I was like,
Yeah.
I was just here,
Yeah.
I was just at the PTA meeting, and they're like, beat it. So, it's,
No, I know, it would have to
Yeah.
be, you'd have to really
Yeah.
pick a spot and have it be
it would have to be
very
fenced off and stuff.
geographically, isolated, and it would have to have separate parking too. You
Or,
can't
or,
really.
or we just fund it on the goodwill of we're helping El Granada, and there's a better facilities, and the public only gets to use it a limited amount of time. I
On
mean,
weekends, yeah.
I don't think people would really be that upset, and it wouldn't be a waste of money, but.
Yeah. There was, like, they had a lot of ideas, but just so much would be affected by the construction, some sort of,
Yeah.
in the courtyard, maybe some sort of like seating for an amphitheater, something that was actually kind of a nice area. You could have some sort of stage and have a small amphitheater there, and then, the school would use it all the time.
Yeah.
But, like you said, on weekends, you could have, things there. For instance, we're even having our public outreach there, at the school, you could have different community outdoor things on weekends. The thing about the fun run, they do this fun run, and they were interested in having a better track situation. And then it was kind of, to me, it seemed far-fetched, like some sort of just thin layer of rubberized material that would somehow be durable. I just see it not lasting. I was very kind of,
For what?
Put it all in the back.
for running.
A running track?
Yeah. So instead of just lay the surface over existing substrate, like, I don't think that's gonna last very long at all. I think you'd get one area where it get a torn hole in it, and then the whole thing would be closed because
All the
yeah, it's
moisture
just.
out here.
I was they got quoted 24,000. It was just like, anyway, that did not, based on my thoughts.
So what did you talk to them about?
Well, that was part. I mean, what I didn't really present ideas so much as just listen to what they kind of were saying.
What they're talking about doing?
Well, that was just some idea that they had come up with. The PTO had pursued it. They'd actually gotten a quote to do it. So that was something they felt was pretty important, but it was also something that would be tore up in 2 years anyway for the construction.
Have you seen the track that's at the high school? It would be the same sort of substrate material in there.
Yeah, but I know that's under like a significant drainage and, I mean, that was like $1 million project.
That is $1 million project.
So I know what you mean, like, but I don't know about
But you
putting
can't do
that
over $24,000.
down over
Maybe
existing,
20 feet.
yeah. And I just,
Cunha has it too.
So the bottom line is nothing in the next couple of years. It's-
that's, it was pretty much, that,
Is that all they talked about, a running track?
okay, they talked about, I'm just not going through it, so they talked about, we walked through the courtyard, so they're talking about having some sort of amphitheater, and then we went out to the playground, they talked about the running track, and then they talked about parking lot upgrades, possibility expanded in renovations. This was actually interesting, this was a good one. And they said there's a need for a sensory path for children with special needs. I don't know what this is my personal, I don't really know anything about that, but it definitely sounds like recreation to me. And then maybe the GCSD could fund one in exchange for parks use of other district lands, such as the one by Clipper Ridge. So that's,
Sonora, yeah.
maybe like we do something for the school, we can get access to the Clipper Ridge, because it is both school district, right?
Sure.
So I thought that was, that actually is something I think we should maybe look into, because they were really interested in the sense, because they do their special needs program there.
That's really
And,
cool.
I mean, that sounds like something you could just buy, right? I mean, is that like basically some equipment and just a place for it, and then maybe their teaching staff would know how to.
Put this in the back burner as a good idea for a
Yeah,
couple of years until they figure out what they're gonna do for the renovations
yeah,
and so forth. It's-
yeah.
I think it's a great potential, but I don't think it makes any sense to spend any time on it now because the whole
It
site
could be
is
torn
gonna
up.
completely torn
Yeah.
up.
Yeah, and noisy, nobody's gonna be able to use it.
Wanna work with
So
them?
we'll keep in
And
touch.
they knew that.
Yeah.
They were happy we came, but the consensus at the end was, oh yeah, this isn't gonna work right now.
Right now. Okay.
Did anything come up about the Clipper Ridge property up there that we talked about before?
Well, I didn't talk to them, the PTO of El Granada, about that. But
This
that
property
was
that's
the-
all vacant.
That was something that, that was in my notes, was that if we did something, because the whole idea of us providing a facility at El Granada Elementary that's not available to public use, if we did something that they specifically needed, like this sensory path at El Granada, it's not for public use, it's for the special
Kids there.
needs
Correct-
program,
correct me
which
if
is
I'm-
public, is public.
And you were meeting specifically with the principal of El Granada Elementary.
About
She has no say
Yeah,
in the
it
other
was a
programs.
principal, and yeah.
Well,
So, but that would be something we could propose, maybe, like you said, if this is down the road, that we could use that as like a bargaining chip for that property uses, something.
Because there it is, away from the school, so you wouldn't have that fear that you have, with the kids. I haven't thought about that before. a new problem where we have to, because I thought.
That wasn't a
What
problem
do
when
you
we went to
mean?
school."
We're the taxpayers, that's our school, our
Yeah.
children should, whatever age they
Okay, we
are,
had that
should be able to
discussion
go and
last
play
time.
there. All right, so now we've
Yeah.
got a property all the way at the other end of
Yeah.
town that we
Yeah,
could use and you facilitate.
But yeah,
and
if you clear
create
a
different
gazillion
things
trees
that we
off it.
want. And it would be open to the
Fantastic.
kids.
Yeah.
Thank you, Nancy.
Okay, so our work plan is pretty much down to summer recreation, support Burnham Park, and continue to advocate for the pump track. So that, thank you, Paul, and thank you for taking the time to go. So on the last agenda item, it was aiming to get us out by 9 after a target of 8:50, so we're doing pretty good. Our next meeting, we have a meeting on the calendar for Tuesday, November 5th, which, as I'm looking at it now, is that an election day? No, we don't have an election. Okay, it's not an election. Because we scheduled 4, so Tuesday, November 5th, and I was trying to think about whether that worked with timing of what we have going, or whether we needed one sooner. We may,
Yeah, it is election.
if around,
It's National Night Out tonight.
if it's,
Well, we're out.
we're doing stuff with the community too. So November 5th would probably work for survey results. Would probably work for an update on, giving a few months to get some stuff going, potentially with the pump track, if the board approves both of those motions. We'd hear more about then Burnham Park next steps, because that's early November. And it's a good time to start the discussion about 2020 summer planning. So I didn't think we had a big compelling reason to have a meeting between now and then, except for as people get involved and, maybe in a small group meeting for helping facilitate at the Burnham Outreach meeting. So that can be kind of ad hoc. So does November 5th still work?
Yeah.
I have a class.
Do we have
for
election? It's 2019, there's no election. There's no election.
class that I teach from 4 to 6.
I do have one that says election night on my calendar.
And we want you here for the survey results. Could we,
All the mornings.
could we do 7:30?
Yes, I could get home.
So we may do a 7:30, Pat has a class that he teaches till 7, so we may do a little bit later start, 7:30.
Might need coffee.
We could do coffee, we could even do pizza.
Yeah, mine's coffee.
You have
Get us
coffee?
here with food.
There's water. Okay, then we will, only 4 minutes late. Adjourn, November 5th, 7:30, but watch your mail, because if the board approves the survey, we'll send out a test for the survey. When we sort out when and what facilitation we need for the Burnham Outreach meeting, we'll do maybe another call for volunteers for that. And of course, that will be on your calendar to attend as members of the community as well. And good meeting.
Yeah.
Thanks, guys. We are
Thank you.
adjourned.
See everyone again.
I just-
Thank you.